Very short. Quite tight, late. Okay. Well, hello. Good afternoon. I'll make this really short presentation in English. First, thanking our special guest, Mary Duggan, Bernice Pan, David van Severen, and thanking also Josep Ferrando for being in this table. So just I would like to give a little bit of context regarding this event. This is, let's say, integrated in the, let's say, a week where we have celebrated the presentation of the Institute of Research in this interdisciplinary in architecture, which is a new institution that gathers together different schools in the field of architecture and civil engineer in a way, which is gathering more than 80 researchers, and it is quite a new institution in Spain. So we have a lot of confidence in what is the future about this institute, and the best way of starting is to put together those thinkers, those practitioners that have been created by Olga Felip and Keral Garriga, which is such a great work, in 3 sessions. First was Tècnica and language. I won't say the names because I could forget one of those, so I prefer just to say the titles. This was on Tuesday, where we also had a meeting with the institutions in order to present the new institute, where we presented an exhibition about the research production of the university, where we gathered together also a pool of industries in the construction, which I think it's very important also to bring close to the university the reality. And finally, the second roundtable took place this morning, and actually with a start yesterday night at Roca Gallery. So we have been celebrating these lectures, first in the university, second in the industry, third in this beautiful institution. Second roundtable was about Tècnica and future, and today's is, well, I don't want to step in your words, Tècnica and sustainability. Well, I'm saying somehow in Spanish. So nothing much more to say. We are very glad to have had this kind of the best presentation of the institute is counting on our architects and practitioners as you. So thank you again. Also, of course, thanking the foundation of the Union of Architects here in Catalonia, which I think is the best message of one institution in the university that wants to keep very close to profession and reality. So once again, thank you, Josep, and I leave you the words.
So before presenting our guests, that these are the most important ones here today, I only wanted to show two images to introduce our discussion today, which is technique and sustainability. And there are two images. One is a picture, and the other one is a diagram. Only two. Okay. The first one is the most intelligent stairs that I have seen in my life. Okay, that's amazing. This is technique and sustainability. This is a railway slippers dryer. So they are drying railway slippers in order that, leaving a little bit of air in between, no space, in order that the air is passing through to ventilate that and to dry that in 3 months, in order to use these railway slippers in a train tracks. Okay, that's perfect, But obviously, what happens? We know that we have gravity in the wall. So when we have gravity, the most important thing is to occupy as less space as possible in plan. So you need to have the things stacking, to be as much higher as you want. But what you need to be higher, you need stairs. What is really impressive and very intelligent, in this thing is that they are not bringing more materials from abroad. They're using the same material that they have it. In a very intelligent way, the only thing that they do, and it seems obvious, but I haven't seen a stair like this, okay? But this is what is magic, The magic is always the same. The magic is when something is really obvious, but you haven't seen that before, And the only thing is that they're doing is that moving out, these railway slippers in order to have stairs. And that's all, And which is the perfect imperfection of this dimension is the harmony in between not falling down because the cantilever and having enough weight to circulate. That's all. This is not about decimals. It's not about having more or less decimals. It's about the harmony in between elements and dimensions. And something that's nice is that when you are going up, obviously to reach a higher point, in order to have more railway slippers drying with less space in plan, you reach the highest point, and then after being dried, you are dismantling these things. And then you are not producing more material than is necessary in that place. Okay. But again, this dimension of the railway slippers is a certain dimension. So it's not possible to follow with a one flight ladder. You need two. So it's a 2-flight ladder. And it's the first time that you will see that one flight is overlapping the other one and is working without being a meme, okay? But without being a meme, it's only this intelligent, That this is the only railway slipper that is a little bit smaller in order that you can push it or you can pull it. So you are arriving to that place, you push it, you arrive to the land, you pull it, and then you continue. So it's the first 2-flight ladders with the both overlapping, and then this thing will have the same material that they need in that place from the beginning at the end. For me, this is technique and sustainability, okay? Because it's a question of circular economy, it's a question of understanding what one means when to choose a material and when you choose a technique of stacking or ventilating or whatever, But I think that this is a very intelligent, not artificial intelligence, intelligence, okay? And the second one is that one, okay? How many dots are you seeing, that image? How many? The students? Could be a nice answer. Okay, I finished. No, I finished after this. No, there are 5, okay? It's true, there are 5, okay? These dots are representing this thing, CO2 emissions in a building life cycle, okay? In Europe, in the 2020, these are data from 2020, is 38% of global CO2 emissions are coming from construction, okay? this is before construction, this is after construction. So 32% are related to the choice of materials. How can we work the architects, no? But obviously thinking about metabolic approach, okay? What is construction itself? Construction is only 2%. Construction itself, not the materials, okay? But the use, no? The use in terms of users and whatever is 64%, okay? 64%. And dismantlement, this thing is the 2%. So dismantlement and construction, so to make it and to dismake it is 4% only, no? So we have to think always in a metabolic approach in order to reduce the materials, and the anthropological approach reducing the use, okay? So now everybody's pressing a button, no? To provide comfort, no? But that wasn't previously like this, no? This anthropological approach is making this is 64%, okay? But we said that this is the consumption of CO2 emissions, no? Of these 4 dots. But we said that there are 5 dots here, okay? Which is the 5 dot? The design, okay? The emissions that we are producing, designing, are these, okay? So the most important thing in this thing is to increase this dot. Because if we increase this dot designing, we will reduce the other dots, okay? That's all. And then let me introduce the three guests, no? We're beginning, the order will be Mary Duggan, and then Bernice Pan, and David van Severen, in that order, okay? So let me introduce first Mary Duggan. Mary Duggan is a British architect with a studio in London. Prior to establishing her own practice, she was a founding director of Duggan Morris Architects, where she worked with Joe Morris from 2004 to 2015. During this period, the firm received numerous awards, including the Mies van der Rohe Award from Contemporary Architecture. In 2013, Mary Duggan was nominated for Woman Architect of the Year. Mary Duggan's work is distinguished by her innovative and context-sensitive approach. Her projects reflect deeply thoughtful design with a strong focus on humanity, professional ethics, and the conscious use of materials. The studio incorporates research and development as an integral part of a practice, with an active residence program and ongoing collaboration with educational institutions in the field of architecture. In addition, Mary Duggan has served on numerous design review panels and has served on prestigious juries such as the RIBA Educational Committee, RIBA International Awards, and the Stephen Lawrence Prize. So thanks, Mary, and good applause for her.
Do I need this? Thank you for the introduction. Very, very kind things to say. I don't know where all that information came from. Oh, that's great. I can see the slides, so I can do that. Okay. So I thought I'd just do a very quick introduction and sort of give a heads up about what I'm going to talk about. And that essentially is, I want to talk about the sociality of materials, or how materials have agency. I also want to mention how the role of architects in the design process, hopefully talking to the small dot, in advancing sustainability. I'm going to talk about quality, not quantity, so I'm going to focus less on the science and more on my experiential concerns around the topic. I want to talk about materials and people together within the discipline of architecture and how materials are used and valued. And I think controversially, or perhaps not, I want to talk about the culture of professional practice and academia, and how I believe it's sort of inhibiting change or pushing against the way that sustainability and the way we address it is being communicated. I think I should say, just to add to my biography, I'm doing a slow master's at UCL in anthropology at the moment. So I think you'll find that perhaps some of my words might slip into that discipline, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm hoping that that might be a noticeable thing today. So this slide really summarizes many of the projects in my practice, but obviously not all of them. And I just wanted to say something about what I do. I have a kind of belief in accuracy, and I think that that notion comes from learning the practice of architecture, but I also enjoy the ambiguity. At the moment, I'm really pushing back on AI renders, and this idea that you can communicate very precisely to your clients what they're going to get. What I like to talk about is what they might get. And what I tend to do, most of these models you can hold in your hand. I like to give my client a model, tell them what its ingredients are, why it's made of these ingredients, and explain the process that I have kind of deployed within my practice in order to make the product. And I find that there's a level of engagement that you get out of that, which is completely different to sort of presenting a fait accompli. I like to kind of lure them into my imagination. So the next, oops, the wrong way, sorry. So I have 3 slides that I think I just wanted to pull together 3 really important references for me, and I'm sorry that this one is a bit of a cliche. It's Morandi's studio, photographed by Joel Mayeritz. And I really love it because I think for me, it describes how objects have agency. We know Morandi's work, we know his still life work, but actually who he was is a completely different story. He lived in this studio, he never left Italy. This is his bed in a house that he lived in with his 2 sisters. And what he did is he moved around Italy collecting a variety of objects from antiques, markets and stalls, and he arranged them on these shelves, and then he painted them. And then he'd move them around, and one painting might be a reconfiguration with another object placed within it. And I think it's incredibly sort of economic, and there's a circularity in that really interests me. Sorry, I'm going to do that all the way through. So this one, not far away from Josep's first image. I love this mosque. It's the Dayan Mosque in Mali. And I think this talks about the fact that architecture can have agency, which is where I want to go with this short talk. It's a building that's made of adobe. It's made from the material that is literally in the ground underneath it. So this material is its foundations. The wooden scaffold pieces that are extruded from the structure are there so the community can maintain the building. So once a year, there's an annual ritual where everyone gets together and they reapply the mud render to this building to maintain it. So the architecture, the maintenance, the aesthetic is very much connected. So people, materials, and maintenance. Actually, that wasn't the third one, but never mind. So this is the sort of annoying, my sort of thing that I've got going on at the moment. I'm worried that actually the discipline of architecture is sort of very inward looking. We employ architects after architects and they speak to their various experts, and we're very much talking at each other. And I think it's a system that has evolved into what I'd like to describe, not very eloquently, as a kind of culture of bad habits. And it's very much set within the profession. I think alongside that is a disassociation with the work that we're actually doing and the people that we're attempting to engage with. Sorry about if I offended anyone. So what I decided to do about 10 years ago, as you've highlighted, is to run a residency program through my office. And what I wanted to do was just change the way my office worked and how it felt quite fundamentally. So I started a residency program, and I brought in 4 residents in the end who were with the office from a very variable timeframes, from 3 to the last one was 1 year. The idea being that they would come into the office and work alongside us. Now, I think it's important to say that this isn't a collaboration, which we do. This isn't a meet and greet, let's have a conversation about an artistic project that we might do together, collaborate with a mutual outcome. What I wanted to do is for each resident to sit alongside us, work autonomously, but we'd come together and cross over at convenient moments when our interests aligned. So this image is a site that we were working on at the time, where a ceramicist, Cara Guthrie, joined us for 4 months. She came into the studio with a program. She'd booked a local kiln to fire her clay work and also glaze them. And she came in with her potter's wheel, and she just made pots all day. We smelt clay. There was this kind of hum going on in the background. So on a typical day when an architect might be trying to work out the thermal line of a facade, she was just throwing out pots, stacks of 60 pots sitting alongside us. And it was a really quite a kind of unusual setting and experience to be, to sort of sit alongside that level of productivity. So what happened with her, we were looking at local quarries because we wanted to develop a facade that was made from salvage materials, from stone seconds within a number of quarries in Somerset. And she became interested in our process. So what she did, which is the previous slide, she went to the site, she camped, she gathered various materials, hawthorn, and she reduced it to an ash, and she created this sort of marbling effect on a vessel that she was making at that time. So our two kind of interests came together at that point, and this is an image of us working on the typology block model on the left with various aggregates, and the final facade proposal that we developed and took forward. And these are the markings of another resident, Nigel Peake, he's a poet, book writer, and he makes these beautiful drawings. So what he did was actually the opposite of Cara. He came in, he sat in a cupboard, and he drew some of the images. The one on the top left is quite literally a translation of a building project we were working on the time, but others related to conversations we were having about colour and texture. So his work is sort of generally 8 levels of texture applied to paper in different orientations. This image doesn't really do the work justice. And then the last was sort of perhaps ironic, maybe almost funny. We were working on an old rectory in the city, and in a number of intense conversations with some conservation planners about which elements of this building we would be allowed to protect. So some of it, she was insistent that we would put the building on ice. It couldn't move through time at all, couldn't rip pieces off the wall. Other areas, she was a bit more lenient. She said we could do some work because there was no real archaeology there. But so what the composer did, Benjamin Tassi, he made recordings. The building had a belfry in it. He took a recording of the bell. He recorded some of the construction work. He took the Gantt chart from the project, and he made it. He was also studying a PhD in Baroque musical instruments, so he researched the musical instruments that were being played at the time that the building was made, and he compressed it into a 15-minute script that we played in the bell tower at the end of the project. So it was a kind of reaction to this sort of odd situation that we had, where we were talking about years and years of history, but actually no real experience was, but his experience of that process was played out at the end of the project. So this brings me on to a project that I made for the Versailles Biennale in 2022, which was curated by Guillaume Romillion and Nicolas Dorel-Bory. And their brief to me related to the global climate emergency, and I think to do them justice, I'd like to read out a piece of the brief. Confronted with the ecological emergency, we were invited to invent architectures, to consider beyond a programme what architecture is literally made of and the materials and energies that the site can compose, developing new architectural languages, and significantly oscillating between visible and invisible matters. So this is my reflection on that. So I feel that the process of architecture, when you think about materials, is very much a kind of about material as a commodity. And more often than not, when generating a design project, we will iterate. We'll have 4 or 5 options. It will be concrete, it will be steel, it will be timber, or it might be a hybrid. And those considerations very often convert into a spreadsheet, and then there's a sort of filtration process in which that project would sort of reduce into something. So this is the self-critique. So this is one such project that I had generated in that way. It was a pool in Beaconsfield, so the south of England. And we went through a process with a QS. It was multiple materials. It could have been anything at one stage, and it ended up being something. But that's not really my point. What I wanted to test was this sort of what-if scenario. And the what-if scenario is, well, if you were presented with a material, if your material was your constraint, first and foremost, you only have one choice. You're presented with a pile of blocks. You need to make something out of it. And you follow the journey that the material and its characteristics tell you to do. So you let the material drive. Then what would happen? So the pavilion, my brief was to design, 50 architects were selected to present. I was one of 5 invited to design a pavilion in the courtyard in Versailles. And I was asked to build it out of stone and wood. So the stone was donated, it was solid gypsum actually, was donated by Saint-Gobain. So I had an amount of blue stone to work with, and that was my starting point. So this is a picture of the structure that I developed intuitively. So I looked at the site. I decided that it needed to be a certain form because the material would only let me do a certain thing. The material that I used to emulate the structure had the very similar characteristics to the Saint-Gobain block. And this is the structure that I designed very quickly with an idea that I wanted to extrude and push the material to its absolute limits. So it scoops very high at the top. The higher I pushed it, I realized I needed to prop it. And the prop was a clay modeling tool from my house, thinking back at the Morandi studio, just moving things and grabbing things that are available, imagining that's the constraint. And it's propped into a hagstone, which is a stone that I'd collected from Devon. So that was the project, and I presented it, and I described how I wanted the entrance to talk to the entrance into the courtyard and how it would be composed within that space. And then I went for a pizza with the structural engineer, and I went with the box with the model in a shoebox, and I took it out of the shoebox and I said, "What do you think? How can we make it work?" And he said, "Well, I think it." He came up with these drawings. These are mostly his. And then he said, "But the way that you need to prop it, you really need to do that. But we need to harden the material." So actually, I think what happened was really interesting. We had to draw it, and reluctantly, I have to say, because I really wanted to design it with a model and just take it with all the materials and build it. But we needed to set it out. And it was these 2 areas of marble, the green and the pink pieces, that started to lead us into a kind of very detailed conversation about how we would repair it. So we set about doing exactly that. It was designed, it responded very specifically to what the material was telling us to do, and we found 2 marble seconds in quarries local to the Versailles site, and we set about making these structures. So all of these characters just got involved because we needed them, not because we tendered or we had to choose them. We just had to find the right man with the right materials to make the project. All of them were, bar one, the stonemason was actually based in the UK, but his quarry source of seconds was in France. So the project came together in 3 weeks. These large gypsum blocks were sourced from the Saint-Gobain manufacturer, brought in to tether the building to the ground. And all of the components were made lovingly by all of these different characters and delivered to the site. So I said to the lovely ladies who interviewed me earlier, but I don't honestly know what to make of it because, you know, and I feel like I should be standing here describing why I think it's beautiful, but I think it's a very ambiguous, I'll go through the slides, and sort of contradictory structure. It's got permanent props or maybe fallen columns. It's a kind of new ruin, as someone has said, it's kind of ruinous. It's got padstones that would normally be hidden, but somehow we ended up in a place where we felt we needed to celebrate them. I think it's temporary and permanent and practical. And I think the aesthetic is somewhere across those three things. I don't know if it's ugly, actually, but I'm not quite sure that I know what's beautiful anymore, because this project sent me down a particular road that made me question all of those things. So I wanted to just, because I'm sure you're thinking, where on earth is that taking you? So this is a project that describes where it is taking me, and it's a project that I've given a new title just yesterday called The Stone Harvest, and it's a competition that I won in 2021 for the Garden Museum. So this church is obviously a historic photo, but this church has been converted by a fantastic practice called Dow Jones into a museum. They've woven a cross-laminated timber structure through it. Dan Pearson is designing a garden. All that was done before I became involved. And they the competition invited architects to design a pavilion for the garden and also to enclose the garden. So my idea, and this is the pavilion that sits on the corner, and this is a module, this is a card model of the pavilion, and the walls extend out and sort of embrace the wider perimeter of the site, which encompasses Lambeth Palace. So the idea essentially is to harvest stone from London. We've coined the phrase made of London. So the building is broken down into 7 walls. Each wall has been split into each of those, sorry, that's a misplaced slide. Each of those, there's 7 walls with 3 typologies. And those typologies are being constructed with stone. So we're at the moment collaborating with stonemasons, stone contractors, a number of developers in London who are contributing, we're tracking projects so that we can take the material to develop the stone walls against these 3 typologies by employing volunteers and apprentices to construct those walls. So that's the end of my presentation.
So next one will be Bernice Pan. So Bernice Pan is a designer, entrepreneur, and innovator in the fashion industry, recognized for her focus on sustainability and ethical production. An architect from Cambridge University and the Royal College of Art, she received her PhD in design, management, and system engineering from Brunel University. In 2006, she created the sustainability fashion brand Deploy, which takes a sustainable production approach with versatile, high-quality pieces designed to minimize environmental impact. Pan has been a leading voice in the debate on the future of design and sustainability, participating in conferences and collaborating with academic institutions and international organizations. His work has been recognized for his ability to unite innovation and social responsibility, challenging traditional textile industry structures and proposing practical solutions for more conscious consumption. So thank you, Bernice.
Is it okay? Okay. Oops, excuse me. I'm just going to put it here. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a real privilege to go back to my roots of architecture and to share what I have been designing since I finished my design education and early days practice. I want to take this opportunity to discuss how we design change. It's about thinking and making for sure, yes, but thinking takes the head. In the middle, there is feeling, takes the heart. And of course, in the doing and the making, takes the hand. And why do we need to design change? Because we actually live in a world of a broken system. And I think increasingly every day, this broken system, political, economic, cultural, social damage is becoming more and more evident and manifesting in so many different ways to which sometimes frighten us. 25 years ago, when I entered fashion industry as a junior designer, because I wanted to explore the different spectrums of design, and because after an architecture education and practice where we dealt with master plan, urban regeneration, huge scales issues, I wanted to explore as a designer the micro issues, the touch and the feel, and the bodily environment, and the emotions and the feelings at the smallest scale, what that feels like and what that does from a designer's possibility of making a difference and making an impact. So I will be asking a few questions to each of you today, because I think as a designer, we should always be asking ourselves questions throughout our career. And my question was, how can we fix a broken system as individuals to really make a difference? And why is the fashion system broken? I would just start from here. I think as designers, we're great at thinking. We conceptualize. We're pretty good at making as well, a lot of the times. But we're not always good at listening. And so normally I have a slides that show all the stats. But now I want to just tell you and see whether you can listen and absorb and remember. As fashion users, all of us will never go out naked. We are all fashion users. Our industry in the world produces 10% of the global wastewater, toxic wastewater. We produce 10% of the carbon emission. We produce 100 billion garments a year, every single year, while there's 8 billion people a year, same every year so far. So year on year, this scale of impact and environmental damage and waste is astronomical, of which the 100 billion garments produced, 25% of the toxic chemicals produced in the world is in clothing and textile. And the wastewater, according to the UN, mostly produced by fashion and textile industry. And of this 100 billion garments produced every single year, 80% of it goes to the landfill and incinerators within 1 year of being produced. Less than 1% of these garments are recycled at all, because most of them are not recyclable. And landfill, what happens is that soil degeneration, biodiversity losses, species extinctions all start to happen, because actually the earth cannot absorb something that takes 800 years to biodegrade. And that's all of the synthetics that make up more than 60% of the garment outputs. And what gets incinerated, toxic methane gas, all sorts of chemical gas, as well as direct temperature rise starts to happen. So if we are talking about sustainability, UN SDG goals, 2050 climate targets, which we only have 25 years left now, this 100 billion garments produced every single year, with 1% being recycled, at 2050, it will be 9.5 trillion garments later. That will fill our oceans, that will fill our land, that will remove all the forests in this world. So what also goes into the water is actually causing ocean acidification, and ocean acidification means that the pH level only needs to change 0.01%, which it already has, most of the shellfish cannot form their calcium-based shells because they are alkaline, which means that we will no longer have prawns, gambas, no more gambas, and we will no more have any oysters and shells-based shellfish. And this system of exploitation of the environmental resource is accompanied by the social exploitation, because there is no garment that isn't made by a person. And in fact, every single garment is made by at least 4 persons, from cut to sew to finish to package, minimum. Even the simplest t-shirt is made by 4 people. And you may or may not be surprised to know that actually, of all the garment producing countries in the world, we are not increasing their economic activities and their people's livelihood. We are exploiting with $10 things that we buy in the stores, where 95% of the garment workers in this world do not get paid the living wage of their own country. Doesn't matter whether that's Bangladesh or Britain. So that's why we need to design change. And that's why actually every day that we operate as a designer in this world, where 70% of the environmental impact is set at design stage, that's where we can really make a difference. And if we actually design differently, we can actually design waste out of the system. And this is what I started to think about 25 years ago in terms of such a complex system, so many different parts in the big machine. How can I make a change? And this is Mary's Duggan's old house, where nearly 15 years ago, she kindly let us do a photo shoot in the house with her signature precision in the building. But unveiling sustainable style. What is sustainability? And how do you define sustainability? And I would like to invite you to pause for a moment and think about how you define sustainability for yourself. I was asked by the BBC News anchor one time when the big factory in Bangladesh fell down, and this was the year before fashion, well, for which fashion revolution was established, so in 2014. She asked me to comment on this tragedy, and she asked me, what is sustainability? And to be honest, I was pretty nervous. I didn't prepare this question, and I thought everyone knew what sustainability is. But anyway, in the spur of the moment, I said, sustainability to me is being accountable for where everything comes from and where everything goes to. And hopefully along the way, creating minimal damage and depletion to people and the planet. And years later, I look back on this statement and this answer I gave. I think it's still true. And so what we do at Deploy is not just another clothing brand, because there does not need to be another clothing brand under the sun, not even 25 years ago, but is to reconceptualize clothing as an interface for care instead of just a commodity of consumption. Because as businesses, we overproduce, we overconsume, we make people overconsume, and we think about only growth and scaling as our only objective. As architects, as Josep mentioned, the impact of waste is ginormous. Every time we ripped out an interior, change furniture, have a new shop, have a new interior, pull down a building, all the material, natural resources and embedded energy are absolutely destroyed with more energy. So how do we reconceptualize clothing as an interface for care, and the care for both people and the planet, and to reconnect ourselves with nature that really affords us to live and to do anything? First, we need to unlearn our disposable habits, because we live in a world of disposable everything. From a coffee that we take away, to the packages that we receive every delivery in, to the food that we buy outside, to the clothes that used to be precious and lasting to us, that now last for a year or two, maybe. So we need to unlearn the disposable habits and really think about how we can remember how to treasure. And that is a key thinking, feeling, and doing as part of our core practice. Now, this is a couture commission by a calligraphy artist. She is a maestro of Chinese calligraphy art, and she commissioned 5 Chinese descent fashion designers to use her calligraphy to conceive these couture outfits. And I was the only fashion designer commissioned who is a sustainable fashion designer. And to be honest, I call myself a clothing architect, not really a fashion designer, because it's not about passing trends and fleeting pleasures. So we created 5 different outfits, and my first brief for ourselves internally as a team was, we are not allowed to buy any new materials for this commission. So how do we use 10 years of our material samples, offcuts, and leftover garments to create these new exhibition couture pieces? So every single part of this garment is modular and can be taken apart. So you will see even the smallest piece of scrap fabric can create the pleat on the shoulder, can create the waist, can create the different parts, the collar, etc. And you can use these different elements to attach onto other garments as well, because I did not want, after exhibition, like every exhibition, everything gets torn down. Displays, carpets, whatever, posters, everything gets thrown away. So every part of these designs had to be reusable as well. Now, reconnecting with our natural and human resources are very much what everyone is talking about, people and planet, but they almost become abstract now. That is just another slogan. It's another communication tool. They are words that we don't even feel anymore. So really, cotton. Why is it that we use almost no synthetics in our garments? 90% of our fabrics from the collection are natural fibers and environmentally certified. And this is not just any cotton. This is a UN Greenpeace certified detox cotton, which ensures that there is no toxic chemical from agriculture all the way to dyeing and finishing. And to really connect that the yarn from these cotton flowers, they have facets, they have properties, they have absorbing moisture qualities because they are from the nature, whereas synthetics do not have absorbing qualities. They have wicking properties that they just kick away the sweat that you are. And that's why all the performance outfits are using synthetics, because it channels the moisture as opposed to absorbs the moisture. And even buttons, these are resin acetate buttons. They are not plastic buttons, because we forget how to feel and how to care for everything that we use. And that is our 360 sustainability compass to which we navigate every single part of our design, our making, our business practice, our after-sale service, our care instruction for customers who buy our clothes or who want to repair their clothes, and our partnership with social, charitable, education, and corporate partnerships. And that's what I mean by breaking down a system we live in a system, a complex system, it's true, but it doesn't mean we can't change it if we really take down this machine and look at every single functional parts and work out how we need to change the parts that are corrupt, the parts that are dysfunctional, the parts that need to be updated, upgraded, new plugins. We know that from technology. We know that from making cars even 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Why don't we think about this in terms of, especially architects, where we are trained to put all the different parts together, all the complex processes together? We need to redesign not just the products and the processes, but the pipelines and the system. So that's how we design change. At every point, as I mentioned, we forget to listen. Clothing is something that is so close to everyone's heart and skin, and it affects our emotion, our confidence, our performance. But no designer tells me in any of the big brands that they listen to their customers first before they start designing. And that's what we do. Every single members of our team serve customers in person in the changing room to understand what is it that bothers you about the dresses that you find in the marketplace. What is it about the crotches of the trousers that never fit properly? What is it about the dresses that never have sleeves to cover your arms when you really want your arms covered? And we listen before we design, because those are the best design specifications that we can have. And those are the design specifications that increase our sales and reduce our waste. And sourcing that people talk about, from organic or to recycled, that's important. But if you source environmentally in throwaway fashion, it's worse than if you never produced anything to begin with. So sourcing and recycling are only the beginning and the end of a linear pipeline that isn't going to really solve the 100 billion garment problem, and certainly isn't going to make our design system or economic system circular. It's all the different parts in between that matters. So that's what we do. We are a zero waste. We won the Best Zero Waste Brand Award last year for the Future Icon. And what do I mean by that? The innovation has to be with integrity. There are all sorts of technological innovation in the world that just fills the world with more stuff and more problems. We have to innovate by thinking how we can use minimal resources for maximum benefit and collective benefit, not just business commercial benefit. So this is a 100% cotton trench coat. And as we know, most of the performance garments are synthetics. This is 100% cotton and naturally coated trench coat that you can take the sleeves off to wear as a separate bolero, and you can wear it as a dress. And also most trench coats that's supposed to be weatherproofing has no hood. So we design a cape that actually has a hood that you can wear all three parts together. And actually also, as an additional plug-in of this hood and cape, we only use less than 1/2 meter of fabric to create a whole new style. So this garment that you can wear it 5 different ways means that we can actually reduce water usage, material usage, energy usage by 80% in one design we make. And I will demonstrate here also. This is 100% gabardine suiting wool. Wool is not only a material for cold weather. Particularly merino wool with very fine yarn is actually great for wicking, taking the moisture out, and actually good for sports and performance. So this is 100% gabardine suiting wool of the highest grade. And we use the same wool for nearly 20 years. So you can always get blacks matching perfectly. And so if you got a pair of trousers from 10 years ago, jacket from 5 years ago, dress from this year, it will always match. So you can wear it as a dress, but you saw me earlier wearing it as a coat. But you can simply take this apart and wear this as a crop jacket. And you can wear this part as a skirt with pockets. So this is how we think about design, by breaking down a complex problem into elements, and by also thinking through how these elements can have continuous life, because the precious resources in this world are sadly diminishing and not being replenished. So our first principle of design is, if a new product, a new garment, doesn't solve an existing problem or improve an existing condition, then it's not worth designing and making at all. And I wonder, the educators here, whether you could make that a first principle for all the students in design courses. Because if we think about things this way, then we actually will remember that resources are precious and that it's not worth having variety and newness just for the sake of it. So this is 100% cotton velvet jacket, and you can take the middle, undo the buttons on the shoulder, which, by the way, are made out of all of our offcuts from our production. So even 5 centimeters of fabric can make something useful. And the satin contrast on the waist, which marks the waist, and it's also where the pockets are as a functional element, but also it's a visual element to be flattering on the figure. These are all using our own offcuts from the production, so we never throw away anything. And you can wear the bolero for cocktail dresses, for evening dresses, for sleeveless top. And so again, there are 3 options for this one garment. But why create this garment to begin with, even if it does 3 things? It's because, particularly in England, dress code is still an important thing, particularly as you become more professional in the workplace or have a societal standing. The dress code is a critical thing, and you don't wear velvet jackets after April. You don't start wearing velvet jackets before October, which means that velvet jackets, which is very important in the social kind of traditional dress code context, has only 6 months of life. That's if you even wear it at all. So I want to think about how you can actually extend this beautiful garment type, which does have cultural and historical heritage and still serves as a beautifully flattering piece on most people, particularly on professional women. How can I make this work harder for them? So that's what we also do as the next key principle of design, is that our products, our garments, have to journey with people through their life stages. Because what you need when you're in your 20s and 30s and 50s and 70s are different. Your body shape changes, your mood changes, your perspectives of the world changes, your complexion changes. So how can we really elongate and accompany you on this journey in our design so that we can all actually become more sustainable together and stylishly? So this hat is a wool felt hat made of offcuts from our coats, and all the silk trims in the silver and the blue are made out of the silks offcuts from this garment. The silk blouse. And the silk blouse, by the way, is 100% silk and 100% hand washable, because dry cleaning, again, is a very toxic and harmful process in aftercare that we try to really help our customers to avoid. So with these key design principles in thinking, feeling, and making, and doing, we are actually now the highest scoring B Corp in the world. B Corp is the only most comprehensive and stringent certification process there is for businesses across governance, environment, community, workers, customers, and pretty much every single aspect of the business, disclosure being transparency and accountability. So as I said, if we think about sustainability, we have to account for where everything comes from and where everything goes to. And we are proud to be the highest scoring company in the world, even more than Patagonia. However, it's not about the numbers. It's about the mission. Our mission is our methodology, and our methodology is our message, is our marketing, is our merchandise. And so with these practice, we actually have been, since the UN Sustainable Development Goals were announced in 2015 Paris Agreement, we realized that we have already long been working towards 12 of the 17 UN SDGs. And that's what businesses can do as an agent of change. And that's how we can design change, with thinking and doing and turning vision into action. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernice. So that's time for David van Severen. And so I will introduce him. So Office is an architectural practice founded in 2002 in Brussels by architects Kirsten Gers and David van Severen. Their practice is based on the idea of architecture as a cultural enterprise that seeks to improve the human environment through responsible and sustainable architectural solutions. Office work is characterized by a collaborative approach that brings together architects, developers, and experts from various disciplines to ensure the quality of each project. Its output ranges from furniture design to large urban projects. Some of the most prominent projects currently under construction include the Aerospace Lab Megafactory in Belgium, the Swiss Radio and Television Building in Lausanne, Switzerland, and the VRT headquarters in Brussels, Belgium. David van Severen has worked as a guest lecturer and critic at prestigious institutions such as TU Delft and the Berlage Institute in Rotterdam. Thank you, David.
Yes, okay. Great. Well, you might know I have to do a lecture after this round table, so I decided to keep this quite short and see it as a sort of a teaser, maybe also for the lecture. And I just took, because in the lecture I will show 7 projects, 7 quite recent projects. I took 5 pictures out of the lecture, and which in my opinion can somehow, hopefully, I don't know, steer the debate which we'll have afterwards a bit. I had no real clue about Tècnica and sustainability, that was the theme, but now I know, but I think the images still fit. I thought it was about making and thinking, but that's good. I will also talk about technical and sustainability, because the first image, as you see here, it's a house in not so far away from here. I decided also to show this house because it's near Barcelona, and you might know it. It's in Matarranya, in the mountains, 2 hours away from here, in a beautiful natural area, just agricultural, natural, in Aragon, just actually, not in Catalonia. Officially, it's in Aragon. But it's a place that is extremely wild and based on agricultural use before, but today it's kind of not used so much anymore. And somebody called Christian Bourdet has been like a collector of architecture, trying to make a project there. It's called Solo Houses, and asking architects, Pedro van Illichhausen has been making a house there. There's many other architects has been asked the same question too. How to make, he gives you a site and says like, there, I want you to make a kind of a secondary house or a house, but with no real constraints, in the sense that there is no brief, there is just a site and that's it. So the house becomes almost like a self-portrait of yourself, because you have to think about yourself when you go there, be there, and what is actually living or staying in this beautiful nature. And this is only one picture of the house, which is a very peculiar picture, where actually the house has this big screens that can roll around it, that can open or close the house entirely. This is a bed, the bedroom. And so depending on many elements, it's even the climate during the day or the climate over the year, you can endlessly change the house accordingly. So that's an important element. And so here you see the bed just being outside, which is an amazing experience. And also, maybe another element for this house was that we had to think about how to make a house totally autonomous. So there is nothing arriving on the site, no electricity, no gas, no water. And so how can you make on site everything to somehow survive or have some comfort in the house or in that area? And of course, this is Spain, so it's already a bit warmer than where we come from, so it helps. But also, you need the water, so there's a water well drilled, there's water reservoirs, there's solar energy, there's batteries, there's all kinds of extras, let's call it, techniques, to be able to survive. And what we thought was very interesting about how to deal with that question is to also show them as almost like parts of life in the house, even staged actually as almost sculptures. And they are here, as you can see, on the roof. There is batteries, and there is actually a water reservoir, and they work on top of the roof. There's the solar panels further and so on, as a kind of distributor of all these techniques that you need to have a kind of a very basic, because it is quite basic, way of living there. I think as a picture, it's also showing that you want to challenge also today what is comfort, what do we know of comfort. And it's, as you said in the introduction, sometimes everybody, all spaces are equal comfort and always at 19 or 20 degrees and perfect moisture of air and so on. You can wonder whether that's really necessary everywhere. And so also this house trying to challenge that. So with a minimum of elements to create comfort when you need it. For instance, this facade that hangs here is out of polycarbonate, so it's not fully insulating, but quite okay. In winter, you can stay there. There's a bit of floor heating. And so with all these small elements, even when it's, let's say, 2 degrees outside, you can be there. And you put on a fire. I mean, it's very basic things, but it's also in how a house can try to challenge, let's say, all these systems that have come inside architecture and that are so-called obvious, but in a way should also put into question. So first picture. Another picture is in a project in Belgium we have completed a few years ago, but this is of course the building site picture, and it's in Kortrijk, Flemish city, who for a government building for the Flemish community. There's some services for the city in there, but they had this old 60s building that really needed to be rethought, especially because energetically it was a total disaster. And so when we got the commission, we thought of this building as super beautiful because it was having this kind of very panel-like glass facades with some kind of thin isolation, course on the outside, very 60s, let's say, not so well made building even. But after, let's say, disassembling it, we had this beautiful, quite amazing structure of concrete beams and columns with these very thin beams holding the slabs. And how to make that into a new building that was actually the highest standard of sustainability as we know it today. So we decided to actually make a sort of a new building around it as almost like a garment or a piece of architecture that grows around the architecture. And this is in a way also, well, attaching to this subject of techniques and sustainability, because actually this height of the existing slabs were very low, and we couldn't add any ventilation, etc. anymore under it. So we decided to use the new architecture as almost like a big columns that are actually pipes that bring in all the techniques around the building. And at the same time, they orient this structure towards the different orientations, east, north, south, west, with different thicknesses. So they make a kind of a climate buffer also towards these sides that actually work differently. And so this is how we build up a kind of a new jacket, you could say, around that existing structure. A jacket of techniques, actually. This is also a side picture of a project we just finished last summer, and it's for a university campus in Antwerp that is housed in a very large old slaughterhouse. It's an existing concrete structure with sheds and shed roofs, so it has a lot of, let's say, north light. Very beautiful structure, actually, and you can see these cassette-like infills. So, but we put in an extra floor, and also we kind of, the shell of the whole building, which is, I think, 140 meters long by 80, we perforated it. So it has these holes in it that you can see still the pieces laying. And these perforations are for two reasons. Of course, when this becomes a floor with classes, etc., and actually labs, physics, chemistry, etc., that's what they teach, you can get some glimpses outside. So there are windows. But also, in many cases, they are actually becoming like grills for ventilations and all these extras, techniques which you need in architecture to just plug into it. So it's this kind of a reused concrete structure that by just adding this layer of or pattern of perforation suddenly gets a new image in its use today. And there's like, I think 2,000 students, well, already now since September in that school, in that university campus. And this, I just actually come back from Stockholm. This is a house we built in Sweden. It's the underneath of that house. So it's not the real house, but actually it is a beautiful space under the house. But it's a house that is entirely made out of wood, cross-laminated timber, also the round columns even. So we were very let's say, fascinated by cross-laminated timber, and especially in the, it's not in Stockholm, it's more up north, that area where there's only pine trees. And so we could use really the local material, which is wood, for all the houses, but in a more, call it contemporary way, with the cross-lamination, and to make a project that finally got its name through these columns. It's called 25 columns. There's 5 rows by 5 rows of columns supporting a slab and a roof, and making a plan in there. But these columns, they are 35 centimeters diameter, so they're like tree trunks almost. And they are very present, as you will see in the lecture, in the plan, and they have an extreme tangibility. And I think I wanted to show this picture also. It's with the making and the thinking as an idea, but also in terms of how the house actually lands on the side. And it's just the bedrock, and our wish was really, because it's a bit of a hilly terrain overlooking a lake, to keep the terrain as it is, and to have just these little feet, which are just little concrete points of foundation immediately on the bedrock, and to grow the column from there and have that support the house. And for the rest, there's only 2 materials that we have used in this house, which is the CLT wood, and actually aluminium, the stair and the windows, but non-anodized aluminium. That was super important for us, because it has a similar way of getting patina and somehow getting a life like the wood has as well. Okay, and this last image is a project in Belgium. It's actually the University of Liège, and we won a competition a few years ago to make the architecture department. So I thought in the context here, there's some relation with the University of Architecture, I think. It would be interesting also for students to show the school which we are designing. It is an existing campus. As you can see, there's these brick buildings. It's actually an old military caserne that has been transformed over years and became a school, art school, architecture is there. And when they organized the competition, it was a competition for an extension. They needed architecture or department needed more space. And this is our proposal. Well, it's from one angle. It's this very abstract, almost blank canvas that stands in the middle of these brick buildings, and that somehow introduces, there's today a big wall here. It was an old caserne, so it's a quite closed site, that introduces a new opening here between these 2 buildings as a new entrance to the site. And that works, let's say, together with what is old, these buildings. There's much older buildings in the back here, and then introduces a new way of, let's say, adding today or contemporary buildings or architecture that are also in a way trying to establish a new idea of what is climate, what is technique, what is sustainability within a bigger context, which is in the entire site, as you will see later on. For instance, the glass house is never heated. It's minimum of 15 degrees in there. It can be ventilated. It's this kind of breakout room that is actually the Fòrum of all these buildings. This is this wall is entirely the back of the actual ateliers for architecture. So they actually move from these buildings there. And so it's also a whole idea of how to, let's say, make a new puzzle within the campus and a new composition with old elements and new added to them. I think for me, that's what I wanted to say now, at this moment. I have still some more to say later, but I hope it helps or adds to the round table talk we have now, I suppose.
Well, I think we have short time for the round table, so it will be a round bed table. Okay, will be a small one, I think, because later we'll have the lecture too. So, and a part of that is because you didn't receive my questions previously, but you have answered everything. So I was preparing some questions, no? But I think that it was amazing because it was very related about what you explained. So I think it's, in any case, I will repeat the questions. So I propose that perhaps I make one question per each one, and the other ones can answer the same question. Okay? So it's first of all directed to somebody, okay, and then the other ones we talk about this. If you think about that, okay. So I will begin with David. David. Sorry, because in Belgium, no, it's David, no.
David, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like here.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. So for David, it was how do criteria such as disassemblability that you were talking about, disassembling things, no, in the second project in Belgium, no, or the potential for space reprogramming, no. So how is the life of the building, no, disassembling or reprogramming in terms of use, influence in your projects?
In general.
In general.
But it's a difficult question, I have to say, because each project is always different, of course. But the idea of, let's say, in the ones I showed, the project of the school, which I ended with I mean the architecture university, this reassembling and, let's say, finding a new life in many existing structures, and also adding to that in a contemporary way in how we make architecture in general. That's I think since day one already in our practice. There are some other projects, and I go really back to 2002 when we started, when our first projects were, and that's also a very Belgian but even European context, where you always have to work with what is there, and somehow that's the start. I think architecture in general can never forget that. But also in our practice, there is this maybe tension where you, even though you start always with what is there, you want to also create a kind of a new way of reading that. And I think that's by adding or subtracting. It's little interventions or bigger if necessary, but that's always this layering of how you create and draw, and then finally also make architecture. I don't know if that's an answer because it's quite vague, but and I think you had two questions actually. There was some other example as well.
No, but even I think in the first house, the solo house, no,
Mm-hmm.
that I think what is interesting is that, so in some of the cases that, as you said, no, is a European attitude, no, that when you have something that exists, no, is how you have a dialogue with that and what you maintain or not, or you disassemble or not, no.
Mm-hmm.
But even with a new project like the solo house, no, I think that there are two layers, no. One is like more infrastructural,
Mm-hmm.
no, in terms of structure, in terms of thermodynamic conditions, etc., in order to provide some different gradient of comfort inside and some kind of space. And the second layer that can change totally in the future, no? Could be a house or could be other thing, no? And I think this is a very interesting way of being sustainable. No, that sometimes you can think in a sustainable materials and techniques. Sometimes you can be sustainable in terms of reprogramming the place. No, and which is the less thing. I think you were talking about that. No? Which is the less minimal resources. No, for a maximum benefit. No,
Yes.
you said. And I think it was the minimal thing related to infrastructure in terms of understanding that could be for 200 years, but not everything that is built there should be thought for 200 years, for example, because the use probably will change. No, I think that is very present in all your work. No.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think it's something that is maybe felt always obvious, but maybe it's more and more also important in the today's debate about that use indeed. And I think the examples we saw before as well, that's you need to be able to stretch that, or at least be very free about that and see life. I think, yeah, not as something like categories, but something that can be everything together and very fluid. And then suddenly architecture can be also very free.
I invite Mary and Bernice to talk about this this theme, and later I will ask to you another thing.
Oh, okay. Can you say the
Not in that order, in the order that you want, or if you want. If not, you can wait for your question. But
maybe I'll wait for my. Sorry.
your question, okay. Do you want I go to your question, or you want to comment something about this?
Just that I think the evolving use, whether it's a personal use or a public use or a collective use, is definitely something that is important to think about, because the world is changing so fast these days at a speed that is never experienced in the past in history. So the backward looking, which people tend to forget, but architects tend to remember more, and the forward looking has to have a combined medium as solution, so that we are building for future fitness.
Because I think that you translate that to design, fashion design, for example. What we were talking about, the capacity of space to be reprogrammed in the future, but you explained that during the life of the people, no? What you were saying, journeying through life stages, no? So it's obviously understanding how you use the same clothes in the different stages of the life, depending on depending how you change it, no? So it's a different way of understanding. It's like turning the jacket, no? In the same question, no? Because okay, Mary. Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood the process.
No, don't worry. Thanks. How significant is the local availability of materials in the decision to use them, considering the impact of transportation on the carbon footprint, etc., different things? How is the significant the local availability of materials that you have explained in different examples? Okay, but can you explain a little bit more that?
Okay, I think there's a scientific answer to that, which is the closer the material, the less transportation to get a material to the site. And but I'm less interested in that. I'm more interested in the local being the accessibility to people to be able to make those materials malleable and part of an architectural project. Because hopefully it came across today, but I really believe that if you start a design process by valuing materials, so understanding where they're placed, who understands, pardon me, so that people will have a greater relationship with those materials if they're aware of them and they traverse through a design process to a project. That's where I believe the value of materials come in. It comes into architecture in a qualitative way, rather than, you know, I often say to my clients, please engage, because otherwise we'll design something and then we'll construct a hoarding and your building will be there and then it will come down and you'll have no connection with it. So how do you make that connection? I think it needs to step outside of the realms of what architecture as a discipline allows us to do and behave.
Yeah, so it's not only about local resources, it's even about the human, no?
Yes.
Resources. So
yes.
it's in terms with the social meaning of this, no? So
Yes.
it's the memory of the place and it's how the people are linked to the architecture of that place. No?
Yes, yeah. So there's a term that's used a lot in anthropology now that I'm doing my part-time master's, which is lived experience. And this idea of a lived experience is extends, I believe, you can extend the life of the building. You take an architecture project as a part of a journey, but actually it's much longer than that. It's all of these things. It starts much earlier with people and their association to their locality. The architecture bit comes, and then there's lots of other uses, but you can expand people's connection to that building if the journey starts earlier and travels through it and beyond it.
And David, how you deal with this working in Sweden, Matarraña, no, it's close to here, no, and Belgium, Switzerland. So how you deal with the idea of local resources, or with materials that you can work with, or with the local memories, as Mary was talking about.
But I think the house in Sweden we just showed. I mean, when you go to that area, it's of course it's in the middle of Sweden, and it's one of the most traditional areas of Sweden, and they used to make well, since history they ever houses out of wood, and the first versions were these beautiful log houses where you have the tree trunks laying one on top of the other and making the corners like that, and that's quite amazing to see. And then of course there's other more advanced wooden houses that became more the standard typical Swedish red house as we know it. And in there, I think in that project we really wanted to reconnect with that wood building technique, but in a more, let's say, contemporary way, and to see what is the tree has been stacked, and then always used and maybe made into smaller pieces or boards, and then maybe also made more and more irrecognizable, to bring it back almost to its essence, let's say, as the tree trunk. And that was our design for the house, was really these 25 columns, which are actually the size of tree trunks. Of course, they're composed, but in a way, somehow they relate back to these logs, to the trees which are standing everywhere, actually, and to also how we can be close to this very beautiful primitive material that is extremely warm and tactile, and it's the house where you come in and you hug a column, you know. It's that feeling, and that feels, and you smell it, and it's ever present. So but it's still very abstract, and I think that's also something in our work which is important, that it doesn't want to be nor traditional or vernacular or anything like that. It's our work, but still deals with these questions in more abstract ways.
In a contemporary way.
Yeah,
no? It's like dealing with
or
these questions, but not being mimetic, not being romantic. No, it's being abstract.
or part of our language, maybe.
And Bernice, no, is that how can regenerative design strategies and circular economy that you have been talking about a lot, that principles redefine material selections in design, in fashion design?
So just a piece of information first, perhaps, if you don't already know. So I mentioned about the big difference between synthetic materials and natural fibers. Synthetic materials, polyester, nylon, acrylic, etc., they are all petrochemical products. They come from these, well, they're petrochemical byproducts. And so they are little molecules where you can, through effectively, you know about injection molding process. So effectively, it's a similar process that you inject infinite length of filaments to create these yarn, and that's also why it is more durable, and it lasts a long time, etc. But because they are not natural sources, they tend not to be so breathable. And in terms of recycling of synthetics, it is only recyclable at the moment, either through mechanical or chemical recycling processes. It's only recyclable if it's 100% nylon or 100% polyester. So if any of these fibers are mixed with nylon, polyester, acrylic, plus a bit of cotton and a bit of wool, they are not recyclable at all, because these yarns are super, super fine and no one will actually unravel them. So you have to first have the filament, and then you spin it into yarn, and then they become the yarn for weaving or knitting. Now, natural fibers, they tend to be short fibers, so whether it's wool or cotton, and so they have to be spun together like this to become a longer yarn, and therefore they are more breakable. But that's good for the planet because they are biodegradable. So linen is biodegraded in 2 weeks, cotton in about 8 weeks, wool in about 4 weeks, and synthetics in about 800 years. So even so it's clear what is potentially less regenerative and more regenerative. And so sadly, because it's cheaper to produce synthetics and we are short of natural resources, and agricultural is under pressure, food is under pressure, forest is under pressure, and so the regenerative thinking and practice has to start from farming. And the regenerative farming, whether it's wine or whether it's forest, has to start now. And because we are, as a world, still cutting trees at an incredible rate, we think we know that we need to conserve forests now. But actually, every year, there is a whole size of island of trees being cut down. Ancient forests, in fact, in Indonesia and in Amazon. So we, as a world, are really not consuming or even thinking what we're doing. So the regenerative has to not only come from sourcing, it has to start from really educating all of ourselves, like public health. Like we were taught as children, smoking is bad for you. But we're not taught from children, polyester is bad for the planet and is bad for your skin. And this has to start not from university level.
Great. Okay, we want to wait for 800 years. Okay, so we'll dress better. So now I think that it's time to go to the lecture, and then I want to thank that they were like grade 3 lectures, not talking about architecture or technique and sustainability through abstraction, through anthropology, through design, but they were amazing, and thanks a lot because we learned a lot. That is the most important thing in this kind of events. So thanks a lot, and I think that we leave 5 minutes to break for a break, and then we begin with the lectures. Thanks, David, Mary, and Bernice.